Nenagh is the county town of North Tipperary. It was originally a market town, and its name in Irish, Éanach Uirmhún, means the Fair of Ormond, a reference to the Ormond Fair, of which it was the site. Nenagh is today a busy commercial town and is governed by Nenagh Town Council. Nenagh is the administrative capital of North Tipperary, and as of 2006 it has a population of 7,415. The town's historic attractions include the Heritage Centre, the ruined Franciscan Abbey, and of course Nenagh Castle. This fine Norman keep was built circa 1200 by Theobald Fitzwalter, the first butler, and completed by his son, also Theobald, circa 1220. The butlers later became Earls of Ormond, and Nenagh remained their principal seat until 1391, when the seat was removed to Kilkenny Castle, where it remains to this day. The circular keep is over 30 metres high and has a base of 16 metres and is one of the finest of its kind in Ireland.
The castle project was, I suppose, coincidences was a lot of the case of what happened really. Back in about 1994, Tomás O'Donnell, who was the regional officer for Shannon Development in this area, approached me and said that he was from Nenagh, his office was from Nenagh, and we had no real good tourism project in the actual town. In Roscrea, which was part of his area, they had Damer House. In Thurles, which was part of his area, they had Lorna Park or the GA Museum, but there was nothing in Nenagh to kind of give it a focal point. So he kept telling me this story, and it kind of awoke an interest in me, and I said, look, why can't we do something in our own hometown? And one Wednesday, it was the 25th of January 95, I was coming up the Dublin Road, I was stopped at traffic lights which were there at the time. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and it was a very wet Wednesday afternoon. I was stopped in traffic, and suddenly my eyes peeped up and I could see the castle peering over number 34 and 35 Pearse Street. And then, unconsciously, my eyes drifted down the two buildings to see that two buildings were for sale. So I went through the traffic lights, down Pearse Street, went down Kenyon Street and pulled up outside Billy Talbot's auctioneering office. Went in, met Billy, and Billy informed me that number 34 or 35 had been for sale for over a year, and there was no great interest in the project, in the two premises. So I asked Billy for a loan of the keys, which he readily gave me, came up through the town, went into my good friend John Hackett. John got into the car with me, and we went up and opened up 34 or 35 Pearse Street, the archway between it. And the minute we opened up the door, the two of us just looked at each other and just couldn't believe the presence that the castle had, number one, and the dereliction and the potential that the whole place had. So from there we went back to Tomás O'Donnell, told Tomás the harebrained idea I suppose I had at the time of kind of a mini Bunratty Castle in Nenagh. And in fairness to Tomás, Tomás said to me, look, yeah, great idea, but it's not going to work. So after much conversation with Tomás, I went away feeling that I'd come up with this great idea, but nobody was going to support it. So I lived with it for about 5 or 6 weeks, constantly saying to my wife, look, I really think this is going to work. And Mary said to me, my wife said to me, go back to Tomás and tell him, look, you're convinced. So I went back to Tomás and said, Tomás, I'm convinced this can work, absolutely. So Tomás then decided to set up a feasibility study, and he called in a tourism operator to focus on the town of Nenagh, see what it had, what it could have, what was missing, where its potential was. So this lady came around and she interviewed all the different people around the town, and they all came up with, I think, the one idea that the castle was the main thing in Nenagh, and what a shame it was in such a derelict state. So with that, he decided to set up a committee of 11 people, with myself as chairman, I must say a reluctant chairman. But anyhow, he called 10 other people to a meeting, and we had a meeting up in Shannon Development, set up our committee, and we got working. And at the stage we have it at the moment, the castle keep inside is complete. It has its 4 floors in place, its roof, which can be walked out on to see the whole of North Munster. The stonework inside is completed. Everything has been sandblasted, and all the stone has been put back in place where it should be put back and has been pointed. At the moment, the scaffolding is on the outside of the castle, and it's coming down gradually every few weeks as each layer is done. Also, the OPW, or Office of Public Works, who are the people who are controlling the project at this stage, they have agreed to build an interpretive centre in the grounds, so that you will enter, pay your fee, get a video explanation of the whole process of what happened, what was there, how it was knocked, how it was built, and the whole history of the whole project, and then you'll enter the castle. So the whole project is hopefully in place. Obviously at the present the money is a little questionable, but we hope, and we're very hopeful that it will happen. It was always my intention when I started out with the whole idea in '95 that the two buildings, 35, 36, would be bought and knocked and have an official entrance when you came into Dublin Road. But it did, in fairness, meet with a small bit of resistance in the town. And although we got permission to knock them, we felt that rather than have controversy in the town, and rather than have people fighting or disputing it, whatever, we said, look, we'll put a nice arch there, dress up those two buildings, use them as a tourist office for one of them, and maybe in some kind of interpretive centre or a craft shop in the other one. And that rather than have controversy in the local area, we'd get on with it and open it there. But funnily, how things have happened is, I think in a way the delay to the whole project has been good, because now we've acquired the actual original entrance, which, okay, it doesn't have the main street presence or importance as 34, 35 Pearse Street has, but in another way, it is the original entrance back in the 13th century. So to me, it is a much more welcome entrance. Oh, I would say at this stage there are millions, absolutely millions spent in Nenagh Castle. I wouldn't have a clue about the figure, but I would have no problem in saying, I'd say 2, 3, 4 million has been spent in Nenagh Castle before it will open.
The aluminium factory, of course, which is now gone out of existence, the aluminium factory, there's quite a good few shots now of that, and the work that went on there at the time, the various operations like dipping and polishing and spinning and what have you, you know, turning the bases. There was one turning the bases of the special pots that were made for Aga and Issa cookers. They had to be dead flat. You know, it was an operation in itself, and that is shown there. And you wouldn't have to have that similar machine doing it now, so to be done. You know, be done in a second now. It took maybe 20 minutes to do one pot at the rate they were doing it there that I saw, and that I can remember. You know.
Well, the aluminium factory made saucepans, kettles and frying pans and anything that cookware, really they did. And then after so many years they went into copperware, and they done that as well. But they used to make the spouts of the kettles and the teapots and that over there themselves. They used to melt down the old aluminium and pour it into moulds and come out. And, you know, there was 3 or 4, no, Clifford, Lord Mercy and things, people like that used to do them.
It was very dirty work. I mean, the lads coming out of the aluminium factory at lunchtime, and all on bicycles, of course, coming out for lunch, or in the evening at 5:30 when they closed, they were all actually black. They were black with oil. It was oil. It was vile, dusty, black, dusty, off the aluminium itself. Aluminium itself is a very dirty mineral, so it is very black.
You see, my mum was always sick, and I was at home from work or from school a lot. So at 12 I decided that was it, I'm not going back to school anymore. And then I went and I reared twins for a lady in the town, and the year after, 2 years after, I left and went into the factory. And we married out of it in 68. Do you know, when you're a young one now and you're just getting paid, you just took what you got and you ran home. And I know after a while, when I went into the other end of the factory sewing on the sewing machine to do the dolls' prams and hoods, I got 6pence an hour extra more than the people on the floor, because that was supposed to be a more skilled job, I don't know, but I got 6pence an hour extra. Yeah. But I never came out of it any more than maybe 4 or 5 pounds. But in the beginning, when they opened first, they had to send a lot of people to England to be trained in aluminium work, polishing and doing all that part of it. No, I wasn't there in them days. There was no dress code whatsoever. Most people wore overalls just for cleanliness sake, because I don't know, did you ever remember the boys coming over the bridge at lunchtime or that? They were as black as the ace of spades from polishing and that, you know. But the girls weren't that bad. We used to wear those pinafores just to keep our clothes clean. We were full of ourselves, of course, at that age. We wanted to be right. The aluminium was sent all over the world. It was brilliant stuff, because I mean, I still have saucepans in the attic that came out of the aluminium factory. You could never wear them out. They were very good, and then they done copper later on in life, and that was very good. An awful lot of the big top chefs of Ireland used it. You know, in the cooking programs on telly, and that used to be the Castle brand, which was their name at that time. Well, I never knew of any imported people in. It was all Nenagh, mostly Nenagh people, and surrounding areas, a kind of where you could drive from, maybe to Meara, you know, mines, places like that. People cycled. It was mostly bicycles. I remember going to work in a bubble car years ago. John Toohey, a bubble car, a 3-wheel car. Then he set 2 people, the driver and a person beside it. John Toohey owned it, and he lived in Silver Street there. The polishers and them people were skilled, and the men that made the spouts and the handles and that, you know, they were skilled. They have to do that. You couldn't just walk in and do it. You had to be trained, because it was dangerous.
Nenagh Hospital was constructed in 1936 to deal with the medical needs of people in North Tipperary and the surrounding areas. It plays a vital role in the lives of Nenagh people, providing essential medical services and also employment. The hospital is managed by the Health Service Executive, and as a part of a cost-cutting exercise, it was decided to shut down the 24-hour accident and emergency services at Nenagh, sending after-hours emergency cases to Limerick General Hospital. On the 31st of January 2009, a rally was held in the GAA complex at Gertland Row to discuss the A&E closure.
Friends, our hospital is critical, absolutely critical to our lives. This is about more than just a hospital though, friends. It is about quality of a life for you, for me, for our children and all of our families in North Tipperary.
The HSE plans are highly dangerous to all the people of Nenagh and North Tipperary. They are unworkable and unsafe.
Now, I, like all of you, have huge concerns. My concerns are about putting in place the infrastructure that the HSE claim they will put in place. But I have no concerns about what the proposals that they're suggesting about a better level of service. There's not a medical practitioner in this country or an expert that will say that the current system that we have at present is safer than the system that they're proposed if it was implemented in full. The reality is things change, medical practices change and expertise change, and we need to keep changing in order to make Nenagh Hospital fully safe for everybody in our area.
This implementation of closing down Nenagh Hospital is happening, okay? As we heard, there's ads going in the papers next week. and there are certain necessary services not being advertised for. So this is happening. We have to move quick in this. What the HEC are trying to do here is implement government policy. We had John Hogan up here a few minutes ago. I still don't know whether he's for it or against it, to be quite honest with you. It's a typical Fianna Fáil ploy.
I'd like to ask John Hogan there. He was going on waffling about the CT scanner.
Let's have no personal attacks. Just make your statement.
Well, he was going on waffling about the CT scanner. We have a CT scanner beyond the room for the past 2.5 years, gathering dust. The only ones that use it are the servicemen. And he's telling us we're going to be up and running in a few weeks' time. You're going around telling us that.
No, please, let's not personalise it. Just make your point. John, it's okay. Just make
Nenagh Hospital does a good job. I don't see any Mary Herneys or Meara Hoctors or John Hogans.
You won't see them.
Over in the hospital at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, see what's going on.
Oh, let's talk.
And see what we put up with. And we do a good job. And we're very proud to work in it, and it should be left the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We have to look at it in the context. Well, the Minister for the Elderly is not here tonight. She has failed the elderly, she has failed Nenagh Hospital, and she has failed the people of North Tipperary. If you look at it in context, there's a scaffolding around Nenagh Castle, protecting the castle and the upgrading of that, and we have a HIPAA consultants moving in with demolition to take away the acute services from Nenagh Hospital. Where are our priorities?
On the 21st of February 2009, the Nenagh Hospital Action Group and its supporters marched from the hospital to Banba Square, where they addressed a crowd of several thousand people.
Which is that a nurse working in Limerick Hospital told me that regularly in Limerick they run out of sheets. Sheets. They run out of sheets, and what they have to do is put the stained sheets back on the bed. And I think she meant blood-stained.
At different times of my life, I was both a patient and indeed a member of staff at Nenagh Hospital. The area of accident and emergency is an area that we must deliver the best quality of care and results for patients. The greater the risk of life, the more specialised the care and attention must be. And where lives are at risk, quality of care comes before convenience of care. Practices at Nenagh Hospital have been satisfactory over the years in the area of accident and emergency. However, we have learned that the physicians that we have, and they do indeed do a good job, but they are self-governing. There are only 2 hospitals in the country, Ennis and Nenagh, where the accident and emergency physicians are self-governing. In other words, they make the decisions themselves and they are not directly linked to the senior accident and emergency consultants in Limerick. That in the long term is not sustainable. I will not stand against medical evidence that tells me otherwise, that patients' lives are at risk so long as there are... Mr. Chairman, whether you'd like me to continue or not, I'm quite happy to do so.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ignore those who don't afford the courtesy to speak. And what I want to say is this, and if it takes me 20 minutes to say it, I will say it. What I want to say is this: before the last general election, I was very open, I was very straight, and I was very forward with the public of North Tipperary. And I told them that at that particular time, I got the impression that there was a wish that there would be a change of government in this country. I gave a commitment that if I was elected as an independent, that my first preference would be that there would be an alternative government put in place. The election was held, the political parties put their policies and put their views before the public, And the reality is that Fine Gael and Labour, which was my preferred option, simply didn't have enough of votes to form a government. Had they enough of votes, I would have supported them. Secondly, Fianna Fáil formed a government, and as an independent, I felt that I had a duty, a responsibility, an obligation to act in the best interests of the people who elected me, and that's exactly what I did. Now, could I tell some of the political activists here from the Labour Party in front of me, could I give them one little example when they talk about political hypocrisy? When they talk about political hypocrisy.
I will use my position to guarantee its future. I will be always with Nenagh and for Nenagh, and that's the way it will be. Thank you.
Oh, it's going to end up as an old folks' home, in my mind. Now, that's my opinion of it. I mean, Nenagh Hospital, this thing of health and safety, and they're closing it for this and they're closing for that. It was opened in 1936 and it was run until now, and nobody kind of didn't do any damage to any of us. We were all born and reared in it. You know, my mum worked in it all her life as a wardsmaid in it, and I still think we need our own. Now they're going to close down Waterford and all those places and take them over into Cork and places. They're going back to the Handley, where they need 12 hospitals in Ireland, and that's it. And after that you can die on the roads.
I used to work after schools in John Slattery's. I was the messenger boy. And I used to go up to Willie Heaney's. Willie Heaney, I got to know Willie Heaney very well. Lord of mercy, Willie's dead as well. He was a great writer in the paper. But his dad used to do the collars, you know, the Connacht Laundry he used to call. And I used to cycle out there, and he used to cycle out to McGrath's and all over the town, like. But I also kept on to my job at Johnny Higginson's when the market used to be on. You know, the market was on the street, and I used to get half a crown for cleaning Johnny Higginson's packed. You know, that was a contract. Everyone was after it. And you'd go into Mr. Higgins and Johnny, they put their hand in the door and head in the door, and they'd say to Johnny, do you want us to clean the front of your shop? Oh God, no. He said, Tom Gray has a contract for that. I mean, that was the first contract I ever had in my life. And then we used to have the sheep market, which I acquired a job off of Jimmy Reardon, who later gave me a job in the mart. Jimmy was a great character, and my job was to, when I come out of the cinema, 11 o'clock at night, we used to come out of the cinema, we'd go to the pictures, you know, to kill the time. We'd come out then, we'd mind the sheep. They were all fenced up by the courthouse, where the statues are now of the great Olympians. Yeah, Jimmy Reardon used to be, because I told a great story about it, because it's brilliant. I said it to McGowan there only the other night, like we were talking, he was snoring laughing. He said, Tom, he said, that you should put that on, you know, on record. You know, about when the picture's over, all the people used to come and pen the cattle, and that time they used to have rattle. See, the rattle markets could be red, green, any colours, you know, every buyer would have their own colour when they were buying. Sure, but in the morning time you wouldn't know who would own the cattle, but when the daybreak had come, it was just like one gigantic, you know, Van Gogh. If you were at the other end of the street, down outside the old post office on the steps looking up ahead, it'd be like a big Van Gogh. Who done the painting up outside the courthouse? It's fantastic. Joe was one of the greatest influence on me about anything in my lifetime. Anything I done, he'd say, oh yeah, that's it, and that's it. I mean, he introduced me to the most greatest people of all time ever met in my life. He introduced me to the great Stevie Harris, Jim Enright, the whole lot of them, all great friends of mine. You know, and of course you have Christy Morgan, all the boys around the town, you know, I've got a lot of people around the town. And Joe, we used to go out to Kerry. I didn't drink for 10 years, and we used to go out to Kerry. I used to go off with Joe, and I remember one night in particular, the funny story, because Joe was a very funny man, and Joe says to me, Tom, we'll go home. I said, go home, right? I said, we'll go home. I said, up to Michael's. No, he said, we'll go to Nenagh. Now the rain was unbelievable. Out of the heavens was, I nearly had to have matches in my eyes to keep my eyes open, to go, my head was going like this, rocking like one of them little, you ever see one of them dolls in the back of the car with the dog that her head goes rocking on the back of the car, and it was teeming down out of the heavens. And of course when Joe got into the car, the very minute he got into the car down in Dingle, he fell asleep, snored the whole way. I stopped in Tralee, Stopped in, man, to get a sandwich in this, you know, these all-night garages. And I got a Coke and a sandwich, and I opened the sandwich as quiet as I could, and then I popped the Coke, and Joe lifted up the head, and one eye opened, and he went, looked at me like that, eating again, he said, and he fell off to sleep. So I drove all the whole way back home. The rain was unbelievable, and I pulled up outside Joe's house in Sallygrove. And before I woke Joe, I said, I couldn't smoke a cigarette. So I lit up a cigarette, I used to smoke at the time, lit up a cigarette, and was smoking away. Next thing, come on Joe, come on Joe, wake up, it's time to go in, I said. And Joe says, never again, never again, never again. The hands up like this, never again. Joe, never again what? Never again what? That driving kills me. Rory Boland is like a walking historian. He knows more history about Nenagh. He could tell you no matter who you were. If it came in from Tommy Meara, it's half Tommy Meara, half Nenagh. Do you know what I mean? Rory would tell you who you were. I'd say, this is such and such a man. And he'd tell him about their grandfather and go back. Now, he can't do that now. He's 91. He's 91, he'll be 91 years on the 23rd of this month. He was born in 1918, number 1 Silver Street, Nenagh. You know, the great band, the Cortina Show band, all the McLaughlins were in that band. They were all talented, very talented people. And Eamon used to do a lot of stuff for Father Horn down in Mayo. It's a funny thing that I happened to marry a lady from Mayo. And Father Horn, I was down in 1982. I was with Jimmy Kane. And Jimmy says, Tom, go up there and sing a song. So I went up and sang a song. And I had no sooner finished, I sang Father Murphy. This priest jumped down over a table, jumped up and grabbed me. He said, you have it won, you have it won. I said, I have what won? He said, you have to go and invite me on one, he said. And I said, is the competition over? No, he said, it's only after starting. He said, there's 4 singers after singing. But he said, there's about 200. But he said, there's none will be at you.
The original malt house seemingly was built around 1720, and it was owned by the Smith family. They were brewers. The malt house, the meaning of the malt house meant that the grains and what the farmers produced went in there and was processed either through export meals and flour and what have you. And they could use the same product to make beer, and the beer was brewed in the malt house. And in 1825-26, the Boer family purchased the malt house, and they continued as brewers, and they opened licensed establishments in the town of Nenagh. 2 or 3 brothers of them, Willem and John Boer, and they had a young family, like we were talking about, a family of children. They educated them, they sent them to King's Inn and all those big high class, because you see they were a money making family, and they educated their children, and they gave about from 1820 up to 1840, 1850 in the malt house, and made a success of their business. And then the movements in Ireland were beginning to create problems for alcoholism. You know, the Father Matthew Crusade came into being, and that got the malt house closed down because people were very religious and they followed the priest's advice and took it on board, and the drink was like drugs today, you know. It destroyed families and it left people poor, no food, all went and drink. So the Father Matthew Crusade, as was known, came into being, and of course it put a bad image on all the breweries and whatever. So the Boers had shut down that business, and they decided to settle for the income from their little hostelries, and they had their kids educated, sent away. So they were good citizens, good Irish people in the sense they were very good to the people around, the population around. They turned away nobody.
My name is Joe Starr. We're in Mitchell Street. The old name for it was Queen Street. And we're here, this is 2007, we're here 100 years this year in this address, number 10. Married to Angela Kennedy from Meara. My mother and father worked and lived and worked here, and my grandfather who bought the place in 1907. And tailoring was our trade, and for 3 generations we carried it on. At the height of the tailoring there were 16 tailors working, doing hand sewing and that. We were all kind of fond of music as well, so the cant in the house was that we were all singers, including the sewing machine. My great-grandmother, Margaret Noble, came to Nenagh with her father at the founding of the railways. She was from Kilkenny. She saw a fella and got to like him. His name was Joe Starr. And ever since in the family there's a Joe Starr, and all the Joe Starrs honour her name through the baptismal name of Joseph Noble. I'm Noble, my father's Noble, his father was Noble, but that's only a name only. Patrick Starr, he was born and reared in Silver Street, now Connolly Street, and as young men, teenagers, his twin brother Joe, who was tall, military-bearing figure, approached the local Republicans and asked to join the movement. This would be around just after 1916, and they accepted him. His twin brother Patrick thought, well, Joe, my twin brother's after getting in, I'll go up and join, but he was small and thin and that, and when he went up they took a look at him and said, oh sonny, go away and come back in another year. So he took offence over that and went away and joined the East Limerick IRA, and on the manoeuvres in North Cork in May, I think 1920 or so, he was killed in an ambush. This time the Black and Tans ambushed them. He was dead for about 6 months when they realised that something serious was happened, because to get into the East Limericks he gave a false name, pseudonym if you like, because he felt if he used his proper name they too would refuse him. Anyway, when they realised he was dead and where he was reinterred to Tion graveyard here in Nenagh and buried there. A star in name, a star in fame, a gem in Ireland's crown. If pride there be, we bow to thee, Pat Starr of Nenagh town.
I always thought the Garda Barracks was the reason Barrack Street was called Barracks. And then when I researched my own piece of ground in history, I discovered that I was living in the middle of the barracks, which I didn't know when I was growing up. But I found that the title we have on our property belonged to the British government. And originally the Prince of Wales, he was the landlord. And I began to question how the hell, nobody else's property around was in the same boat. And I found out then that I was living in the horse barracks. See, there was a foot barracks and a horse barracks in Nenagh. And I was able to trace it back to 1670. And I could go back to 1630 when the regiments set up their barracks in Nenagh, but I could have definite that was 1670. I'd be speculating if I went back further. They built that and finished it in 1835, and all the military that were in the barracks here in Barrack Street, they all moved up to their new barracks up there, and this was vacated. There was a lot of good mineral wealth around Nenagh. You had the slate quarries, you had the silver mines, they had a geological awareness of the benefits. And North Tipperary, Lower Ormond was a fairly good farming benefit. They planted themselves well. Now you had 1,200 soldiers based in Nenagh for most of the 1700s. So that was a fair lot of people when the population in Nenagh wasn't probably that, you know. So it was a big military. Nenagh was a big military garrison.
It all happened to an ad in the Guardian in 1956. You know what I mean? And I applied for a job as an apprentice electrician in Nenagh with Dennis Meehan, and I served my time there until 1960 when I finished O'Mara's Hotel and I left to go to Dublin. And you know what I mean? That was the kind of start of the whole thing. And then I got a job in Dublin for 16 years, and then I was always anxious to get back to Nenagh. And no young fella at the time had a car, and when I went to Dublin with a car, it opened a lot of doors for me, the car, because everybody where I went to work only had bicycles, and they looked at me as something special. This guy is, you know. There was no work that time. I was only 16 years of age that time, and I saw the ad. And all my life, as long as I can remember, I had an awful interest in electricity. It was like a vocation to me, and still is today. I was always watching the Guardian to see was there premises coming up in Nenagh, and there was a lot. Fogarty's in Kennedy Street was for sale. I came down to look at it and at the auction, and I considered it too expensive. So the other premises were for sale. I came down to that as well, and that was sold. But the guy that bought it couldn't pay for it because there was a bank strike for 6 months. And I contacted somebody, and I got it for a very reasonable price at the time. So I renovated the whole thing. Of course, that time it was very bad. There was 2 shops there. There was one was a bicycle shop originally, and one was Nellie Connor's. It was a clothes shop. And renovated it then and opened in 1976. And I was successful from the beginning because I brought some products that were never seen in Nenagh, and people flocked to buy the modern. You know, it just wasn't available, and I couldn't get enough of it. When I bought that in about 99, I completely rebuilt that place then from the ground up, and I opened that then in just before 2000, and it was I built a brand new workshop there as well, and warehousing, and that's where I have my present motor rewind workshop and pump, where I do pump maintenance. So I got itchy feet again, and Welch's next door came up for sale. It was a derelict building, so I purchased that building there, and I took on the rebuilding of that premises. And as you can see today, it's you know, it's a great building. You know what I mean? I'm very proud of that building. You know what I mean? It's a great historical building. You know what I mean? And you can see for yourself the job we done on it. You know what I mean? There was 3 diggers actually working on it at the time, and we saw this little arch at one of the end walls. You know what I mean? A little cut stone brick arch, and We kept going down, digging down, and next thing we came across a fireplace, a beautiful cut stone fireplace, and kept going down and down, and until we came down to the very bottom. It was a major clearing out. It was filled in about in 1890. It was filled in completely with horses and cars, with stones. It just filled in and brought to the level of the street. And in addition to that, then there was 3 tunnels underneath, huge tunnels underneath, where the man that owned it in the beginning had a brewery there, and they kept vats of drink, and then we found a tunnel across right under the road, going to the other side, because they had their brewery at the far side of the road. And in those days, there was nothing in the far side of that street. It was only a field, and there was no railway station, no creamery, nothing. You know what I mean? So they had a brewery at the far side, and you used to take the barrels across under the road to the brewery. So that's all. I've preserved all that, and it's all still there today as it was originally. And it has turned out beautiful down there now. I have the original fireplace there now, and it's there to be seen.
Pierce was built sometime around the 1950s as well, and it was a Minister of State came down to open the estate, basically, I suppose you could say. And the bishop would appear there as well, I think. The bishop blessed the estate anyhow.
But because they were so big towards the houses we were after coming out of. When you think of it, we lived in the one up and one down, and that was it.
Well, that was the first building that was done again after the war. Everything closed down basically during the Second World War, the 1939-1945 war. Everything closed down, and nothing really started up until 1949 or 1950. So that was the first housing that was done, big housing that was done here in Nenagh.
We moved to Knock Pierce, but we were the second family into the house. But I remember it as a green field and a big huge 6-foot wall around it. We just climbed the wall to go in and play in it. But other than that, it was Meara's, I don't know, was it Meara's field up there, wasn't it, where Knock Pierce was? But I remember it being built, and I play in and out through the building site, because at that time you could do those things. Now you can't. You know, you can't go near building sites now, they're too dangerous, but health and safety and everything that, but didn't do us any harm. Ran up one side of the houses and down the other.
Grace's Heel Bar is a family-run shoe repair business which has been in operation for over 60 years. Jimmy Grace started the business in Silver Street in the early 1940s. The business was relocated to Emmett Place during the 1960s, where it is now run by Jimmy's son Adrian. Adrian learned the trade from his father and also spent over 2 years working at shoe repair in Roaches in Limerick.
We say my own father came to Nenagh in 1920, and he served his time in the Corneals. It was he was a wheelwright coach builder, and my father served his time as a young lad there, and his father paid 10 shillings. Instead of he getting paid 10 shillings, he was paying 10 shillings to learn the trade, and he had to sign a contract that he wouldn't damage his employer's tools or take steal or do any depredation. And he in 1928, when he decided to start out on his own and have his own business, he bought the title of a property where we are now in Stafford Street, and he had 7 children. I was one of them, 6 girls and myself, and he turned out horses, cars. He was a wheelwright by profession, and he did numerous carpentry work in terms of services to the farming industry, you know, wheel making, tram car making, such. And he died in 1969. I was serving my time, as a coincidence, in the same firm that he served his time in, which was the Ormond Garage. That's where Corneals, he started. They owned that when he was a young man. So I found myself finding out the history of how the coincidence of how what goes round comes round. And I thought it was very unusual, because it started to piece together itself for me. My present eldest son, John, is well, you know, called after my father. He took up the timber business, even though we educated him, sent him to college, and got him ready for probably an easy lifestyle, as we all think about him. We don't want the hardship that the people came before you had. And he wanted to go back to the timber, so he's in Stafford Street now in the old forge, which is the River Lane building that we built there.
The wheel, my granddad made the wheel, and he was next door, and Bill Kavanagh did the metal ring that goes around it. He made it here, and right outside the door here, this is called River Lane. This laneway just coming outside here. So there was a river flowing just outside the door. But what they used to do is, my granddad used to, and Bill Kavanagh used to light a ring of fire, like the old Johnny Cash song, with turf, and they put the band on the ring, and it would expand. It would get larger. Then they'd slip it over the wheel and throw it into the river, and the steam would come up, and the band would contract, and it would squeeze in, and all the joints close up perfectly.
My great-grandfather was the first, came from Templederry, and they owned it, what was Jimmy Hudson's shoe shop at the top of Alley Lane. You probably don't remember, but the old people would remember going into the shoe shop and the big long counter and shelves. It was a bar, and that was Ryan's Bar. They came from Templederry and they opened that as Ryan's Bar, John Ryan from Oatfield. And he had a son, Danny. He had a lot of sons, Danny and Jack and Frank and Jerry and Abe, but Danny came up here and married into here, who Phil Kennedy owned at this pub. Phil, and they had a daughter, Susan. Phil and May, they had a daughter, Susan, one daughter. And Danny Ryan Clever came from the pub down there and married in up here. So this was Phil Kennedy's pub, then it was Danny Ryan's, and then John Joe's, and then mine. But Ryan's were undertakers as well in Ball Alley, and my great-grandfather was undertaker there, and Danny took it and moved the undertaking here. So you're undertaking in pub, and my father then in the 70s took up floristry, and my mother. And it's florist, it's 40 years now, 40 years at now, you know. So So that's how that came to pass. An uncle of my father's was one of the Ryans of Ryan and Harties. There are pictures on the garden this week. So they came in from Templederry, and the Harties came from Meara, and Ryan and Harties then was a combination of Meara and Templederry and the country people coming to town, and they're still strong down there, you know. So we were the Ryan and Hartie. So unfortunately back then, when somebody died in a partnership, there was no legal thing. It was like whoever was left owned everything. So Shamie Hartie often says, you were lucky that he was lucky that his uncle lived longer than my granduncle. So I would have been a tailor probably down there had Ryan lived longer than Hartie. But anyway, it's not to be. I am a timber tailor. I'll give you a timber overcoat. The future is the funerals, and try and enhance the funeral business and bring it on, you know, and concentrate on it. It's a bit busier and it's a bit more complicated than it was. Not complicated, but you know, I mean, years ago my father and Murphy Langton would go to a funeral, they could get drunk, and a new hearse was bought one time and it was turned on its roof coming down, and that's the way it was then. But now it's different. You have to, it's you know, it's just a bit more, and I spend that more time with it. I tell you, Sundays just was brought it home. This place is full of characters, absolutely full of them. And you know, the one thing I've learned about the pub and the undertaking, and I listened to characters. He was a character. He's dead. There's no more characters. There's still lots of characters. Nina's full of them. We have an abundance of them, and I mean, everyone has their own bit of character, but there's some very good characters still knocking around. And here on Sunday was the proof of it, you know. And that's the future of it. You've got to keep these characters and look after them, and you know.
We have one! Pound Street! Come on, Pound Street!
Right? Yes, he did. And Joni says to me, she sat up the same day, she was all makeup. She said about Tom Cray, she said, he's a rogue, he's a robber, he's a thief, he's a liar, a vag, he's a bum, a rat. But you know something, he's not the worst of them.
Our favourite, that was my mother.
Good man, thanks. And take it easy around the right eye. Huh? You got the right cataract out, you know.
Oh yeah.
You did it okay the last time.
I won't be touching your cataract.
Need you one. It's gone.
Huh? You used to give that one. That's that. What's your name? A Prime Minister that had no wife.
You're going back a long time.
No, what MP in England had no wife? That's a good question.
MP or Prime Minister?
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
You'll be surprised when you hear the answer.
Sir Alec Douglas Hume, no.
Maggie Thatcher.
Who?
Maggie Thatcher. I was just telling him there, I'm the second longest businessman alive in Nenagh, 53 years. 1955. Joy started 1947.
You started here in 1955, John?
Yeah.
Did you?
I started here in 1955.
I remember coming in the early 60s, alright. Remember yourself?
9th of September 1955.
I don't want one as tight as that one. I want it tight like that.
I know you're going, but John wants to get his up because
you know he got a good haircut now.
Just must be cool.
You must have gone on holidays, are you, John? I'm not, Frankie. Sunnier climes.
I'm going to call on Kitty Quigley, who is one of our legends here in Nenagh, to lay the wreath. Kitty's not adverse to going on radio stations and giving out about things, and I believe she's still at it.
Paddy O'Connor had a big industry at the time. I couldn't say how many he had employed now, but he must have had maybe 10 or possibly 20 even employed at stages, making baskets or making particular things. Paddy did. Joy and Martin would have actually worked with him on the basket making, because it was a kind of family tradition, and they had they made various and every kind of a basket, every shape and form of a basket, that was needed. They would make it. I mean, just make a muzzle for calves now, which would be tied around the calves so that they couldn't be suckling the mother or whatever. And there was a little basket that they'd make for the front of a bicycle. One for carrying messages in, but there was another little basket like the shape of a seat, which is put onto a metal frame on the front of a bicycle, and you could carry a very small child in this basket, kind of. There were straps on it, naturally, for safety purposes.
On the 15th of May 1992, Joey O'Connor was interviewed on Tip FM. You're about to hear extracts from that interview.
Well, my father was Patrick O'Connor and a basket maker by trade. I'm also a basket maker by trade. Spent some time making baskets, not a big length of time, but some time making baskets. My mother was Nenagh O'Brien. She was from a place called Fawnlock in Bawn, Nenagh, on the outskirts of Nenagh Rural, and she was a sister of the late Nenagh O'Brien, that O'Brien family. The people at that time, of course, they were looking forward to a better Ireland. There's no doubt they were anxious to get the bee house. And at that time, there was a big scheme of houses built in Nenagh, which was the first scheme, local authority houses in Nenagh, that relieved that situation. It was known as St. Joseph's Park. And the most wonderful people are in St. Joseph's Park. They come from all sections of the town. Proud people, but they come from all sections of the town. Well, in those days now, there was very few sweet shops. There was one other, Eddie Gleeson, he had where JKC is now, he had a sweet shop, all right. But there were very few sweet shops. To go and buy sweets, you had to go into a public house or licensed premises to buy sweets. They had jars of sweets, and you would go into public house. But this was solely a sweet shop for sweets, fruit. And then we started going to the markets and importing fruit very shortly after getting into the markets. So we went to the markets, on some occasions I went to the markets, believe it or believe it not, twice in one day. My mother was a widow, and she had to manage. She made baskets as well. She did everything. She started a laundrette. She didn't leave us short. She's the one that left me what the values of life should be all about. You went to mass in the morning. You went to the confraternity as well. You got confession every Saturday night. If you didn't, you weren't let into the house. And that's how we got brought up, and we learned, taught to play with ourselves and to respect everybody. And in Silver Street, there was no trouble in doing that in Silver Street, because there were wonderful people. So it was a flooded field, where we have a 10-acre site now here at Martyrs Road. That's a 10-acre site. We're a national name now. Everybody knows about O'Connor's. The passers-by, they don't pass-by, they come in and shop. So it was a flooded field when we bought that. We had it for a number of years before we developed it.
And how significant an investment was it at the time? Was it huge money in those days?
It was, indeed it was. But we bought it from a family in the town that had great respect for us, and indeed we have a great respect for them and still have. That's the O'Hara family. We were great friends. The O'Hara family in Nenagh, they sold me that, and Tom Kennedy sold me the centrepiece, and when I wanted further land, I had no difficulty in buying it from them. He asked for a price. There was no haggling about it. I gave it him. the custom that's in Kenneth Street, that's where we originally started. And you can take it as a great pride for me to be able to say, the customers are going in there now today, and they tell me they never shopped anywhere else.
After how many years?
Well, you can take it, well, over 50 years. Just 50 years, over 50 years. Nenagh may have some little faults, I don't know what they are. I could never see, people tell me that have some faults, I could never see any fault. But even if they had, I love the Nenagh, I love the people of Nenagh, I love the town of Nenagh. If it has some faults, I still love it with its faults. And the faults, if there are some faults attached to the town of Nenagh, it certainly isn't lack of generosity or friendliness. Nobody, Nenagh is known as the friendliest town in Ireland. I was at a function recently in Nenagh, and a consultant planner from Dublin, when she couldn't find anything derogatory to say about my shopping centre, she did say it was lovely and tidy, but she added what I would consider the greatest insult that you could offer to the people of Nenagh. She said the shopping centre was more in keeping with a city like Limerick. The word is resilience. I'm the most resilient person you could ever meet. If I say I'll do something, you can be as certain as night follows day that I'll do it. I may not be able to do it in a short term, but it's well known, my record stands there. I will do it. If I say I'm going to open a shopping centre, I'll open a shopping centre. No matter what it is I ever said that I was going to do, I did it. Sometimes it took me longer than more times. But resilience, hard work. You must recall now, even after the length of time that you've interviewed me for, and know that my life's work means hard work. I'm a workaholic. I love working. I'm here in the shopping centre at 8 o'clock every morning, and sometimes earlier. You can come into the car park. We have 50 car parks at the rear, 50 car parking spaces. You can park at the car park. You can shop in this new Kenneth Street market. You can leave your car where it is, and you can come back up and go out to Mall and shop in other shops. Your car is okay. You can shop in other shops in Kenneth Street, or you can go across into Pierce Street and shop and still utilise our car parking space. From my heart, it's been a wonderful lifetime. The most wonderful thing of my life, first of all, is my family. My family is number one, always number one. And when others were going enjoying themselves, going to the golf course and going away on a Sunday and going away on Wednesdays, I took my family in the back of the car down to Drummondere to swim. I never, ever neglected my family on a Wednesday or a Sunday. I spent my time, I have no regrets about that, I spent my time with my family. But to say to you that what was the second most wonderful thing was the wonderful people that come shopping in Nenagh. They're God's own people. And when I go from door to door canvassing votes, I don't go from door to door and we talk about the old days. And I'm brought in. I could have tea in every house and a lot more as well. And I must say, life to me has been wonderful. Ups and downs, I don't mind. I can take the ups and downs. The only thing I can't take is something that's bad health. Any other worries are second nature to me now.
And finally, you have no regrets?
I have no regrets. I have no regrets whatsoever.
The railway here was put in here in 1840, and you had only probably a railway between Dublin and Cork or before that, but they started to link up all the major towns and develop transport. Remember, you had a horse and cart and coaches before that, so I mean, you couldn't go anywhere unless you could time the coaches, and they wouldn't be able to take any more than maybe 6 or 7 people. So I mean, it was travelling, commuting was a big thing. Then the trains came in, steam engines, and before the motor cars even. All that, all the real foundation of Ireland as such, in all the improvements came through British. I mean, you can't deny that the bridge over there, you know, all those things were all provided for during the state, when we were a British state.
The Agricultural Show Day took place on the 15th of August in 1953 and was a big event at the time. It took place in a field opposite St. Joseph's Park. Barney O'Driscoll was in charge of the volunteers attempting to erect the marquees. He was assisted by Bill Cartwright and Tommy Carey, along with many more. Many local industries occupied display stands. Horse jumping was a big attraction of the day, and there were also many other events planned. In 2008, the show day still takes the same form, with a combination of display stands, competitions and musical entertainment. Here we see one of the entrants for the carriage driving competition. One of the highlights of the day is the competition for the most suitably dressed lady. Aoife Kelly, the 2008 winner of the Rose of Tralee, is one of the judges. Here we see the ladies displaying their eye-catching outfits in an attempt to scoop the top prize. The tough decision is made by the judges and a winner is crowned most suitably dressed lady. Things are a bit less glamorous over at the Donkey Derby. This event always attracts a large crowd, as there is always a great atmosphere and a bit of horseplay.
There was a ball alley up there in the men's club, up in, do you know where Silver Line Fashions or where the Shan Development offices are? That was another men's club during the British. You know, it was a men's club, British and Irish. I suppose anybody that came into it had to be a member, and. They used to have recreation there. They had a ball alley at the back of it, and of course ball alley lane. To get into the ball alley you went up the lane, so they called it ball alley lane.
My father and my aunt, John and Elizabeth Slattery, came to Nenagh probably in the late 20s and came to work in Robinson's in Nenagh, number 3 and number 4 Pearse Street, Nenagh, and worked there for over 20 years. And in 1945-46 they decided to try and branch out on their own, and they tried to acquire number 6970 Pearse Street. At the time, 6970 was a derelict building and was owned by a person in America, and my father set about finding out would it be for sale.
So he struggled to find an answer from those people in America, but through good advice from his workmate in Robinson's, a man called Frank Boland, and Frank gave him a wonderful suggestion to him and said to him, if you ask your solicitor to contact a solicitor to the people in America, one solicitor has to answer another solicitor. So he took that piece of fantastic advice, and within a few weeks he found out that people in America actually were delighted to sell 6970 Pearse Street. So they bought 6970 in 1945, and on the 6th of May 1946 they opened for business. And my father actually always was very proud of the fact that the staff in Robinson's that they had worked with came over during their lunch break and worked in his business with himself and his sister. That was something he took great pride in. People like Mary Behan and who had long history with him working in Robinson's came over and worked their lunch break with him in his new business. So it opened on Friday the 10th of May 1946, and I suppose 63 years later we're still here, and we got a little bit bigger, and down through those years he and his sister worked very, very well together, and every few years they try to add on another piece of property and renovate the place and get more stock and branch into different items that they had. So they opened with a kind of a clothing, a little bit of furniture and all that, and developed those items down through the years, so that now we have 7 premises on the main street, which is from 68, 69, 70, 71, 2, 3 and 4.
He would have been called a town crier. I mean, the town crier would have been somebody that was in the service of the local council to announce the water cut-offs. Now that was his job. Now I don't know what they paid him, but he could spend most of his time up there, and the town clerk might say to him, look, Tom, go around town and tell them the water will be turned off, ring the bell, draw their attention. The water will be turned off between 5 and 6, which was an every week thing. There was so many water pipes problems around town busting that they had to send people out. I mean, modernising it, you went around with a loudspeaker now, but back then you didn't. And back in the olden days, prior to him, you would have had the same person would be attending the gas lights, announcing meetings. That's why they call him the town crier. You went out and you did the street, you rang the bell, draws people in, and you started shouting, now the water will be cut off tonight between 6. Now that would have been his situation. So he became a known character, Tom Tierney, you know. People see him, he wasn't really working physically. He was hanging around and he did all them things. He'd go up in the monument after Mass and be preaching, whatever he'd be preaching, you wouldn't know what he'd be saying. Yeah. He'd stop up people coming out of Mass, you know. They'd be coming down the square and he'd start off. The statue of James, we call him, he was cut from stone, limestone. No, it wouldn't have been a work of art, because I had looked, I remember him there, but he was well weathered. and he had a hat on him, and he was the same as a gentleman maybe that was near to copy cut out of stone of if he was original, if you like you showing me Tom Tierney there. I mean, who'd go to the trouble of cutting out a statue of somebody that was being dedicated as an Irishman, and no Irishman ever say who he was. Dan Shannon was the same, and Dan, even though Dan was decent, poor old devil, Dan would be going around with the wellies on him in the middle of summer, and the same wellies, you know. I remember my father's funeral, he walked beside me, Dan did, and you know, I can imagine somebody with a high opinion of themselves, you know, and they said to themselves, "Jeez, we don't want him at the funeral, you know. They'd have big shots and ministers and TDs coming from all over, and then he'd be stuck in the middle of them and these wellies, and, you know, it would have been hard to swallow for some people." Dan was walking and they wanted to get rid of him, and one of them went over to him when he was walking beside the hearse to hear, "Dad, go in there, get yourself a pint," give him a half-crown. So Dan went into the Widow Ryan's, and he must have got the Widow Ryan to throw out a pint fairly quick anyway, because he came running up after the funeral again with a pint and he drinking and something. That wasn't meant to be.
And with that we end our journey around Nenagh, a small town most people will never know. But for the people who were born here, it's the place where their talents did grow. All the boys and girls playing games on the street have grown up and shared with us their memories so sweet.